Perfect.
Okay, so Marty and Scooter don't die in the woods, day 3. Burntroot to Nadine Portage. Nadine?
No, Nadine.
Nadine, yeah.
Yep. I dated a girl named Nadine.
Oh, did you?
Briefly.
Congratulations.
It was not her portage.
Well, it was not hers? When did you date her? High school?
So it might have been hers. It wasn't far away.
Okay, so the trek that we're doing today is from our campsite on Burntroot to this sort of meeting of 3 paths. So the Nadine Portage is the portage that goes up to Nadine Lake that's up here. We didn't do that. We basically camped at the base of the portage there.
Yeah. And
this day was a pig.
Right. Well, this is the day that we were afraid of. And in fact, as you alluded to, I think the portaging was worse the first day.
Yeah.
I think this day was actually fine.
I agree 100%. I wonder if the days were reversed, how we would have felt if we'd done this day first and the first day third instead.
Yeah.
But realistically, even the long portage that we did on this day, it was almost 2 kilometers. It wasn't really uphill though, right?
I mean,
so, in fact, there were parts of it that were downhill, which was nice.
Yeah, so we're going across a small watershed, right? So we're going from the Petawawa watershed to the Nipissing watershed. So there had to be an up and down of some kind, but it was not onerous, right? And so really the issue would have been, had we had to do double portaging, that would have been like 15 kilometers or something for the day. And 15 kilometers, is fine if you're got a race penny on and running shoes, but 15 kilometers with all your shit 2 of the 3 times is not so good. So
like an extra 70 pounds of weight on your back doing that much walking plus the canoeing would have been unpleasant. Fortunately, we are all that as man, and we didn't need to do any of that double portage shit. So off we go. Are you ready to see day 3?
Do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so this is day 3 in the morning, waking up on our campsite here at the peninsula that's pointing out from Birch Bay. So I've got a video that actually walks through the campsite. It's actually pretty long, I think. So this is sort of the back part behind your tent. So there's your tent in front, which I'm walking out past. I think at this point you're still asleep, and I'm up again getting coffee ready and the like.
Yeah, you were an early riser. I think I was only up before you 1 time maybe, and that was a nice difference. I'll diss Hugo here and the wine trip. I seem to recall always being up first and setting up all the meals, but
What are you gonna do?
Well, you can see how nice a morning it is here, where there's some cloud, but it's just overhead, and you see the sun rise in the distance. And
yeah. So the previous evening, you brought the canoe around to this side. We didn't know that this was here when we first landed, and it was only after exploring that we found that.
And that was good because there were some waves in the at some point on that lake, and not the best place to secure a canoe on the rocky side. So it was much easier to have it come over the other side there.
Yeah, for sure. It was that little bay that's there was kind of shallow, but easily enough you could canoe in and land there, and it was nice and sheltered. So it was down over to the left of the screen where we landed and had to pull everything up. This is the path that I'd taken in. I saw that tree and I thought, oh, the rope is missing. That's when I said, I don't see a bear hang. But here it is, and there is the bear hang with the extra rope that you brought with, thankfully.
That's a fine bear hang. Look at that.
Bear overhang. Yeah.
Good height, good distance.
Yeah. You could set your watch to that. So for some reason, I thought it was necessary for me to walk out and also take a recording of the Thunderbox area.
Good stuff.
But there we go.
You wanna know where you're pooping? Does a Scot poop in the woods?
Does he? So basically, I would say also a lovely campsite.
They left open because we did the same views out that we did right the night before, but
yeah,
but a nice solid campsite, two-way entrances. The fire pit was cool there. As we were just mentioning, we had a lovely tarp hang, and it partially covered the fire pit. So we also warded off the rain that looked imminent with hanging the tarp.
That was our good luck charm, I think, was putting the tarp up when rain was going to come. Because the first night we didn't put the tarp up and we got rain. And every other night we put the tarp up and didn't get rain. So
correlation must imply causality right there.
Yeah, put tarp up to avoid rain. Yep. Correlation means causation. That's what I've learned through my years of studying science. So this is a video you took where we had landed, but this is basically sunrise.
Lake. Yeah, and flat. So the night before it was wavy.
You say, Scott?
Coffee necessary. But yeah, we pulled everything up over that, only to find that we had this nice path that would go up and around from the back. But it's because we saw the camping sign on that tree.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we have to go, right?
To be fair, I do think that this is the official entrance. It's just a steep entrance. And the other one has been crafted over time where people say, fuck that.
Yep. I think that's totally correct. Okay, so this is after we've set out now. I don't know what time of day. I'm going to say 10. You can correct me.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was definitely earlier than the previous days, so it might have even been 9:30, something like that. We definitely got up because I didn't go back to bed after that sunrise shot. We got up and we had still some wet stuff, so it wasn't super quick getting going, but I would say a bit before 10 when we got going. And this is just across the Birch Bay. Grand total of 200 meters, 300 meters, something like that, and you see the point in the picture where we stayed the night before. And this was a nice sandy landing. Unlike most of the portages that are rocky, this had a little beach where you pulled up on.
Yeah, it was quite nice. And in fact, if I remember correctly, in the sand there were like flat stones that almost looked like a path that was going out into the water at that point as well. So that was quite cool. The place that we're at is here at the beginning of a 1.228 kilometer hike. So we were starting big, but like we said for the previous days when we're talking about this one, the portaging was actually fine. It was pretty flat and fairly easy to go.
But we definitely put on our shoes rather than sandals.
Travel.
Yeah.
Here's Burntroot saying goodbye. Canoe. There's the Forest of Despair. I'm gonna come over here. There. We got Burntroot to Robinson. 1.285 kilometers. Oh joy.
5.5. But yeah, I think that was also an important change from previous days, was portaging here. We made the effort to take off our hiking sandals and actually dry our feet, put socks on. But for me, it was sneakers. You, I think, had hiking shoes. But that was, for me anyway, a lot more comfortable to walk in. And yeah, that would be my recommendation in the future. So put on sneakers / hiking shoes when portaging.
Long distances.
Long distances, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's no point in doing it if it's like 100 or 300 meters or something. But if you're doing like a kilometer, 2, definitely.
I guess, what did we have on for Unicorn Hill? Did we have our sandals on?
Yeah. Yeah. We had our sandals for every portage up to this one. And that was where we started putting our sneakers on. We didn't do it for the 75 here. I don't think we did it for the 435 there either. But then when we got to these two, we also put our footwear, change footwear for the 1.9 and kilometer and 850 meter ones.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the end of that portage. We didn't pause, just all one crack all the way through. And now we're on to Robinson here.
Pretty muddy portage. I remember.
It was muddy, yeah.
Come out, that's after 1.3. How you feeling, Martin? Not sweaty at all.
And the lakes changed a little nature up here. They were thinner. We had left, or we were leaving the Petawawa watershed. Definitely felt like smaller water for the next couple of days.
Yeah. For the rest, until we got back to Cedar Lake, it was all small water stuff, right? So this one that we're going into right now, Robinson, was small compared to like Burntroot and Catfish, but it was the biggest of what was left as well.
Yep. And this is originally when we had planned out the trip, we were going to spend the night in Robinson because that was down weighting the amount that we had to do the first day where we were traveling into Algonquin as well. But beforehand, we decided to make the weights or the distances exactly equal, and that meant staying in Burntroot, and I'm glad we did because it gave us more time on the big lakes, right? Catfish and Burntroot really have a different feel to them than the rest of the trip.
Absolutely, even Pearly, right? So Pearly was small compared to Burntroot, but it felt big compared to whatever came after Burntroot, right?
Also felt hard and cold.
Yes. Yeah, I'll forever associate Pearly Lake with ice coming from the sky. Okay, yeah. So
you were telling some nice stories about your time growing up in Newfoundland on the Robinson Lake. I remember that about your friend who was a crack shot and some other.
Took out the polar bear that was banging on his door. Yeah, that was a good one. So here is, I think this is the end of Robinson, if I remember correctly. It gets really narrow and comes into like a beaver dam that's down here. The portage says 75 meters, and it is, you can technically launch your canoe from the other end of that, but we actually walked a little bit further, maybe another 30 meters and put in past that, I think. Maybe
even 50. It was the high water portage was 75, but we were in moderate water, so it was a bit longer than that because 75 is nothing, right? 75 you start and you're done, and this wasn't quite you start and you're done.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I've got a wheel of death happening here right now because I tried to take the question mark off Brent Murray's name, which we've settled on.
Pretty sure it was Brent Murray.
Yeah, I think you're right. I had Brent Murphy in mind, but when you said it was Brent Murray, I'm like, yeah, that's it. Oh, come on now. All I did was try to click on the text box.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, it's because these guys are loaded with videos. We took way more videos than we took pictures.
That's what happens when you bring GoPros.
Mhm.
I think I do slightly regret not bringing my point and shoot camera here.
Yeah.
We were really worried about weight because we weren't sure about having the one portage versus two-way portaging, three.
Yeah.
And so I usually do bring this and put it in my pocket, and we would have had more still frames had I done that next time.
Ironically, we brought rain gear, but didn't wear it even when caught in a hailstorm. So
That's a good point.
yeah.
And we're back.
And we're back. Okay, so I do have a video here.
We're not going to Algonquin without rain gear. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
Get a little pick here.
That's where the dam is down this way.
Yeah, that's that portage that can be marked 75 or whatever.
Yeah, 75 meters allegedly. But it's actually closer to like 75 plus, we'll say 50 meters to launch. There's an N in launch. For Lee.
Yeah.
But I would say this day was probably our most comfortable day to the point in the trip, because the first day we had Unicorn Hill, the second day we had the maniac paddling in a hailstorm moments. This day was actually comfortable all the way through, even with all the portaging.
Yeah, it was chill. We didn't take our time so much that we were late getting into the campsite like the next night.
Mm-hmm.
And this Robinson Lake into whatever the next lake, Whiskey Jack, yeah, that's the most paddling besides down the Nipissing at the very end of the day that we did. So it's not heavy on paddling this day, and so we did that portage, and then as you say, we I think the map that I had was getting a little bit wet, so I was trying not to refer to it very often. So I couldn't remember if there was one more portage or not before we had to go north to the Nipissing. And so we came down the lake and we saw somebody setting up for a portage right to the right there. And we asked whether this was the way to the Nipissing, and that was our new best friend, Brent Murray.
Yep. And he was a pretty cool dude. He was something like 22, I think, 23 years old, ballpark. And I think he'd worked for a while in Algonquin.
Yeah, he'd worked for the park for a couple of years, or 2 or 3 years, down in Canoe Lake mainly, and some backcountry, he said. And he was doing a 7-day solo, the same route that we were doing, but he had a pack boat, so that's a small canoe, a 12 or 14-foot canoe that often you use a kayak paddle for. And he was packed light for a 7-day trip, but still had to double portage. And he made the mistake of going quickly up into Robinson or Whiskey Jack and spending a whole day and a half there fishing, getting absolutely nothing. So feel a little bit bad for his fishing endeavors there.
Yeah. What slide are we on here?
He was very jealous of our portaging here, because this was the big beast of the portage, because we only had to go one way. We were quicker than this young whippersnapper.
That's right. So he was actually ahead of us, right? So he took off as we landed. And by the time we got to Ramona, which was a glorified puddle here, because it was so small to paddle across, he was already across and had already walked halfway and returned, and was picking was returning on the way as we were going, I think. So we passed the halfway point, we passed his stuff that he'd left at the halfway point as he went back to collect. And yeah, so because we were doing it in one go, we just sort of stopped at the halfway point for a break and then shagged it and basically came to the end.
Here we are, mid-portage for 1.9. Is it? 9.93. Back moose. No, back moose. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So that was our break. You can see we're in pretty high spirits here. Compare that to halfway up Unicorn Hill, where there's really no comparison, right?
And we picked mushrooms that day. I know we did because we had mushrooms for the first time that night.
Yeah.
I can't remember where we picked the mushrooms.
I think we picked most of them up the Portage, up the Nadine Portage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here it was, you know, kind of warm. We were kind of sweaty because it was warm and humid, but nothing wrong with this portage.
Nope.
And yeah, got to the end of it and had a quick chat with our new friend.
Yep.
And then we decided from there to go up towards High Falls. We didn't get anywhere near High Falls actually, but we got to the portage there for lunch, and that was much less water than we thought it would be. So we in fact just left the canoe on a shoal in the middle of the Nipissing and walked a little bit further up and had lunch on some rocks next to some faster water.
Mm-hmm.
And that we passed that campsite on there are two campsites.
This one, yeah.
We passed the one on the left. That looks like an absolutely lovely campsite on a bit of a bank looking at the river flowing down.
Yep. While we were up eating at High Falls, Brent basically just made a beeline to his campsite. So he took that campsite at the end of this portage. And of course, ours was up here further.
Yep. And we saw Brent that day. We'll talk about some other characters we saw that day. And we heard somebody down on the lake. But
I think Brent spoke to them, but we didn't. Yeah.
And yeah, so otherwise it was a pretty secluded day. And then the next day, I think we only saw Brent. So it's always nice to be a little bit away, and we definitely got that.
Yeah. So what's this video?
All right, video is
That looks like the end of the portage.
This is at the end of a 1.93 kilometer.
2.93 meters portage. That would be rough.
From Ramona to Nipissing.
There we go. There, we're at the end of the portage,
Here we are.
and the Nipissing River looks very different from the Petawawa.
Mosquito bite. There you go.
The other thing that we haven't mentioned is that by now the trip had developed some of its own vernacular. So the first day that we had come across when anything was really good, it was Keith Primo. That would definitely be a repeated piece of vernacular, and the other one is Heroes that we'll talk about in a bit.
And we'd also done un-Keith anti Primo at that point as well, I think.
Which is self-explanatory.
Which is self-explanatory. Keith Primo, good, and Keith anti-Primo, bad. So yeah, that was at the end of that portage.
Yeah.
Here we're,
I'm going to say it's a lovely day too. Look at that day.
it's beautiful. Yeah, we actually had to put sunscreen on this day.
Yeah.
I
Mosquitoes weren't
don't
that-
think we'd done very much the days before. We probably should have on day 2, but then we got caught in the hailstorm, and so
washed away the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the advantage of going late August is we really didn't have much in the way of mosquitoes. It was not bad anywhere.
Yep. it was really only around sunset where flies came out at all. I felt. I mean, I don't know what you felt.
I noticed them, but they weren't bad, right?
No, they weren't bad at all, and didn't have to put very much fly spray on at all either, I felt. So this is.
Oh yeah, that's where the canoe for lunch.
Yeah. So we paddled up yay far, and we got just past that campsite to where we pulled the canoe up on the shoal, and then, then hiked up a little bit further. I think we got up basically to here somewhere, right?
Where you can see.
Yeah. And
we hope to go to High Falls, but as you can now see on the map, High Falls was halfway up the portage.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, the river was basically a portage at that point. It was so shallow, right? So
beautiful.
That's you went up the other side of that little island, I'll call it. I stayed on this side, and that's basically what we're looking at for the river, which is realistically at that point more of a brook than a river, right? But yeah, I think where we ate was actually just here.
Up there, yep.
Yep. Yeah, here we go. So after lunch, we come back down the Nipissing, and we get to Gautier's Dam. So Gautier's Dam is like just off the side of our video here. This is where we pulled in for our portage. Nice sandy bottom here, which was kind of nice. There we go.
All right, you're out.
There you go.
That's changing out. Who's out? Last portage of day 3, going from the Nipissing River to the Nipissing River. 850 meters.
So there we go. This was again an easy portage. We creamed that one, came out down here. Brent was right at the end of the portage, chillaxing, and we hung out with him for a little bit there.
He was distraught that he had done a look around in his campsite and there were no thunderboxes.
Oh, good, yeah. No thunderbox at the end of Gautier's Dam portage. So
it's perfectly fine.
He sat over a tree, over a log, something like that.
That's when he told us most of the first bits of the stories. We'll talk about other stuff after, I guess. But I think that's where he told us that he wants to be a bush pilot when he grows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very much enamored by the natural beauty through Algonquin, I think. So he was saying that like once every couple weeks he goes up and comes up from Simcoe, I think is where he lived, and does some sort of trek through. And he has friends that he meets, and they paddle about and have designs on being the best damn paddlers there ever were.
Yep.
Okay, so yep, Brent Camp. That's Brent's camp. As we paddled up through the Nipissing, which I'll continue to refer to it as.
For me, the nipple is funnier than the piss, but you know.
No, I like the piss. I'm gonna edit that out. So anyway, as we paddled up through the Nipissing towards our own campsite, we ended up coming across some wildlife here, which turned out to be a nice family of river otters. So I've got a couple videos of that. This is where we first come across them. They're a little bit hard to see. As we come around this bend, I see a frog that's over on our right that we have a quick look at. You might be able to see it swimming along here. Right there.
Oh yeah, there he is.
There he is. And then lo and behold, down the river in the distance right now, but we do get closer to them. Here's our family of river otters that are curious. I think one guy had a bit of a harem here and he was protective. There he is. He pops up for a look and then dunks under.
They are quick, and this is something that I was kind of comfortable with because exactly the same thing happened with me and Hugo. But I had told Scott about the experience and how nervous I was because they would just pop up and then pop down, and if they wanted to, they could pop up right next to you, take a bite out of you, and be gone before you know it. So.
This is what I was worried about because I'm in the front of the boat closest to these things that are bobbing up and down into the water. And of course, my knees are right beside the gunnel. So I thought, am I going to lose some flesh here? But basically, they were playful. So,
and there it is again, making some odd noises and very, very active.
Some snorting noises, huh? So it was like... that kind of a sound he was making.
That was me.
Oh, that was you, was it?
And I think by this time, Scott had the knees kind of tucked in, the camera in one hand, and his canoe paddle in attack position in the other hand.
Actually, you'll see that here. So now he's getting braver, and this is where I grab the paddle. That'd be slick. Bring up on a deadhead and then get mauled by river otters.
It's when you don't see them that they make you most nervous.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. So there you can see how close my knee is to the edge. I could just imagine him bobbing up and taking a chunk, but there we go. So that was certainly one of the highlights of the trip were the river otters that we came across. But I mean, there are so many highlights, right?
That was fun.
Yeah. Around this time, we came around a bend that was quite sandy and saw lots of footprints. Turns out that the pictures don't do them justice. There were lots of moose that we saw, lots of moose print. There were some that had sort of sharper ends to them that I assumed were bear, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think in your notes you can say definite moose and probable bear.
Yeah.
Because it had to be pretty heavy. You can see that the moose are making an imprint, but not a massive one. And like when we were standing, we hardly made an imprint next to the one on the top left. Yeah. So it was something weighty that did it.
Yeah, it had to be something my weight or heavier to be able to do it. So my guess was bear, but I don't know. And I've heard stories that there are bear in Algonquin Park. So
we didn't mention this, but up in Burntroot, we heard a bear.
That's right. That was on Pearly, wasn't it?
I think it was on Pearly. I think it was just on so the bottom of Catfish, I guess. Actually, now that it was.
You're right. You're right. Yep. You're right. We heard it. It was sort of like over a ridge, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle of Catfish. I'm revising. It was before Catfish opened up into the really wide area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, on Catfish.
Yeah. So after the prints and the river otters, we end up at our campsite, which is at this Nadine Portage site. For some reason, I decided I wanted to take a picture of the Thunderbox. There we go.
It's a glorious Thunderbox.
There it is. Here's your platypus, which I took a picture of because I want to remind myself to get one of these.
I do like.
There were lots of frogs at this site.
They got the toad.
There were lots of toads at this site. I'll just edit that previous part out.
Yeah, these guys, and they jumped, like we had put the packs together after we'd taken stuff out, and they were like hopping on top of the packs.
Yeah. There was one guy that was like bouncing, trying to get into my tent at one point, or it seemed like. Maybe he's just trying to get away from me. Here you'd seen some mushrooms around the area. I think you'd collected those.
Yeah, those probably came with me from a different portage, and then we got more, and we went looking for more here.
You're right. I think you got those on the way down to Brent's campsite.
Yeah.
And then we went looking for more up through here. Yeah, you're right. And just after we'd set up here, this is where we first are introduced to the heroes. So I would like you to take over on this because you seem to really be able to pin down their character, and you have anyway, do it.
So we set up camp, and then there was one guy with some stuff, with bags that he had walked over from Nadine, and we talked to him briefly, and then he went back up, and it took quite a long while for him to come again, but he came again with a friend while we were picking mushrooms, and got some really nice big fallen wood for our campsite fire as well. Mm-hmm. And then we got back to the campsite, and we had a nice conversation with them. And they had, either that day or the day before, I can't quite place it, but they'd come down from Kiosk, which is a really tough day from there. It was 6 p.m. and it became clear that these two guys had to take pack boats, solo boats, so that they wouldn't canoe together. Mm-hmm. And that meant that they were unable to do single portages. So they had to do double portages all the way from Kiosk, and they were headed towards Canoe Lake. And I asked them about their schedule, and they said 3 days, I believe. And I said, you can't get to Canoe Lake from here in 3 days. And they just kind of looked blankly at me, because these guys clearly were weekend warriors, were heroes. First time that they had ever done such a thing, such a trip, and they bit off way fucking more than they could chew. And one of the guys was kind of in better shape than the other, and the guy who was not quite as in good shape was just inconsolate at that point already. And they were talking about, had we seen the ranger cabin near Brent's camp, or on the other side of Brent's camp, because they had booked the High Falls campsite, and they were trying to get out of doing the leg up to High Falls and then coming back. And so they were just beaten men. And we called them the heroes because it was a heroic undertaking that they should not have done.
Yeah, I think total they were looking to do like 120 kilometers in 5 days. Yeah. was what I took away from it. And I can remember when they were talking about that, I was blown away, right? I'm like, wow, that's impressive, because they're basically doing double what we're doing in 5 days. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to do that. Like what we did with 70, I felt was comfortable.
Yeah, it was definitely comfortable, and it's not quite double, but you can see their logic. You can see
it is doubled because they're doing the double portages, right? So
I don't know if that's in the 120 or not.
Oh, maybe.
but no matter what, you can say, okay, well, 25 kilometers a day isn't terrible. That's, if you're doing a ground speed of 4 kilometers an hour, that is what, just about 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
6 hours a day isn't even a work day. But if you're going for the 6 hours, it's a bit of a difference. So when we congratulated them on their mileage, they just had these blank stares.
Yeah.
Just like they were not happy to be congratulated. They had realized that they had done something terribly wrong.
Yeah. And where they're coming out, like they had driven to their exit point, left the vehicle, and then drove back up to kiosk. And it's like an 8-hour round trip to do this, right?
Come out, they need an 8-hour round trip. And at the same time, they were talking about where to fish.
Yeah. So at the point where we meet them at 6, we've already set our campsite up. They're like, we've been going for 10 hours so far. They still need to get to their campsite all the way down the Nipissing across Gautier's Dam Portage.
Yeah, and they didn't get to the campsite. So they were dismayed to hear that Brent was at his site because they were hoping to eye that site. And then you can see on the map there's a ranger cabin there, which is at the end of the Long Portage, but that's a ruins of a ranger cabin. There isn't one there. And so they were dismayed to hear that there wasn't a ranger cabin too. So we talked to Brent the next day, and he said that they ended up camping at the edge of the portage at the south side of Gautier's Dam Portage. No, up there.
Oh, up here. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not a portage, which is not a campsite. They just could not go any further. And we were, these guys were probably 28, 30, something like that. And when we had dismay about what they had decided to do, we were pretty sure that it was not the right decision. But then we had a confirmation when Brent was like, these guys were stupid.
Yeah.
Why would you take 2 flatboats? Why don't you just canoe with your partner?
It was ridiculous. So with these heroes, I've pulled up their map. So the area in blue here is our 5-day circuit. Kiosk is up here, and I didn't know if it was 1 day or 2, but that's the trek that they did before we met them.
Yeah.
Right. So we met them here, and then they camped down here.
Yeah.
Where's Canoe Lake on this map, Martin?
It's below the map.
It's below. It's down here somewhere, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That I thought it must be here because it'd be stupid to go further, right? But there you go. So if you actually look at the length of that line,
it's off map by a bunch, actually.
Oh, is it? So if they're doing that in 5 days, let me just sort of as the crow flies here, right?
So if they did kiosk to where in that 1 day,
yeah,
I think they could make Canoe Lake in 4 days, and maybe they had planned to go fishing 1 day and do that stupid amount each of the other 4 days, because that would make sense too. When I said you can't get to Canoe Lake in 3 days, I mean Brent and his buddy could get to Canoe Lake in 3 days from there. That's not an issue, but these guys.
Yeah, they could.
Doing it reasonably, wouldn't. And so they didn't say, oh no, it's 4 days. We're taking 4 days for that. So they were planning to get from there in 3 days. So maybe it was 1 day from kiosk, 1 day that they were going to go fishing, and then 3 days. But yeah, it was just.
Well, I mean, that has to be 1 day from kiosk then, right? Because if you stack these guys up end to end, that's 3 days worth of that planning, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think basically what they did was say, yeah, we can do 20, 25 in a day. Boom, 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 right?
30.
Or 30 in a day, yeah.
I think they're saying we can do 30 in a day and we'll have 1 day where we fish.
Yeah.
And then this 5 day, which looks not impressive next to the 1 day, remember the other people we know doing these loops did 7 and 8 day.
Yeah, right. Including Brent, who's doing it in 7 days. Right. So
Well, he didn't take a day or a day and a half to fish, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, as the heroes were trying to get themselves together, we went looking for mushrooms. This I use as the royal we. I basically just follow you through the woods as you pick mushrooms, which turns out I'm happy to do because wild mushrooms are the shit. Really good, man. The way you cook them, make them all crispy with the garlic. I'm good at finding the poisonous ones.
No, that was cool. It's always a bonus when you can eat off the land a little bit. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be brave enough to not bring food and count on eating off the land.
No, if you do that, you have to have far, far less time traveling because you have to spend half your day trying to fish.
Yeah.
And I've since learned, I don't know how I got this old without knowing this, but mushrooms are largely made of chitin. And so they're not high calorie because of course we can't digest chitin.
Well, it'd be like eating your hair, right?
That's keratin.
Oh, is it? Forgive me, I like physics.
It'd be like eating a lobster shell.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
And keratin is tough to like we don't digest it, but theoretically we could because it's made of a protein, and if we were able to get that digested, we could use it. Chitin is starch that we can't use, fiber that we can't digest.
So which is it, chitin or keratin?
Keratin. Sorry, chitin. Chitin is in mushrooms.
How do you spell chitin?
A-I-T-I-N.
A-I-T-I-N. Nice. Chitin, like lobster shells.
But tastier.
Well, tastier. Yep. So that was great. It was fabulous being able to eat these wild mushrooms. So there were 3 types that we were eating. The chanterelles were by far the most plentiful.
Yep. And the choicest.
The choicest, yeah. I ate the Super Mario one, but then just had terrible gut pain and hallucinations.
Yeah.
So that one wasn't a good one. No.
And then we had some puffballs, not very many.
Yeah, and we got the solar plexus.
And the last ones are teeth mushrooms, dentonin, which look a little like chanterelles, a slight different shade, and underneath the cap they have little teeth like things, little stalagmites coming down. And those are choice as well. Actually, unrelated to the trip, a couple of days ago I found one that was 7 inches across, and it fried up really nice.
Nice. Yep, sounds delish. So speaking of eating mushrooms, by the time we got ourselves together to eat on day 3, it was dark.
It was a long day of portage.
There's the moon out. So after we ate,
it was a really bright, big moon.
Yeah.
And this was as we were saying, it's a portage campsite because the heroes walked through the campsite. And it was a good campsite for a portage campsite. So portage campsites are usually thought of as pretty crappy. But this also, people would walk through the campsite if they needed to portage through, essentially, but we only had the heroes walk through.
Yeah, as we were setting up. And realistically, nobody's going to be portaging through at night anyway. Finding a bear hang at this campsite was not easy.
That's true.
Yeah, we had to really stomp down through the woods to find something there.
Yeah. Worked out, but took about 20 minutes to find, and then about 10-20 minutes to get it hooked up to.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's dark, actually.
Yeah.
There's your toad.
There was one guy that liked there's one guy that liked hanging out around the Thunderbox in the campsite as well. Good flies there, I suppose.
The flavor of the fly there is just, the shit comes through.
So fibrous.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy's going to shag off here now. After we'd eaten and chased some toads around, we went for a swim, and
the entrance was something to mention. So the entrance to the campsite in Portage was very steep, sandy, which was not something that we had before, and it was a slight bend in the river where we were. So that meant there was fairly deep water, so we could go swimming there. And the campsite, we had already gotten to the Nipissing, like you said, was a different character, but we didn't really mention that. So this is on a bit of solid land, and especially the next day, but already this day, the Nipissing was kind of snaking through a little bit of less solid land, like more marshy area. And so that meant from the campsite, we actually had a really good view over land, which is pretty unusual in Algonquin. Usually you only see distance if you're on a lake because you're looking through these forests. But we had a nice view, like you saw, of the moon, and we went down into the river and had a cool night swim, but cool in both ways.
But interesting in the sense that we had bright moon and stars above us, but over the hill there was a massive thunderstorm with lightning streaking across the sky that didn't touch us at all, but we could hear it and see it very close to us. So it looked like it was probably on Burntroot, I think.
Yeah.
Based on the direction, right?
Absolutely. And it was a little scary for me at first anyways, because there was a big thunderstorm straight south of us and another one west of us. And this, unlike the hailstorm, this was chock full of ground strikes. So there were ground strikes after ground strikes. So, 30 seconds, 20 seconds didn't pass without us seeing a ground strike.
And big strikes too.
Yeah.
Like the lightning was ferocious, I would say, in those storms.
And
did Brent get rained on, or did it miss him?
No, so that he was asleep at the time. We talked to him the next day. He was asleep at the time and did not notice it, which is remarkable because from the distance we thought that it was over his camp, and that's why you said it was over Burntroot, because he didn't get hit.
Yeah.
So, but it was super close, and in fact, I was quite sure we were gonna get a barrage because the one to the west was straight to the west.
Mm-hmm.
And being very, very active with these lightning strikes. But I guess it was following, as you implied, the ridge that's the watershed between the Nipissing and the Petawawa, because the one to the west moved southwest and then was to the south of us. Mm-hmm. And there was this surreal thing where we were sitting there or like floating there in night swimming water in the Nipissing, swimming in the Nipissing, and there was clear skies above, really a bright moon, so the stars were visible nicely, but not like you could see the Milky Way a bit, but it wasn't like a huge streak through the night. And you saw a shooting star, mm-hmm. and at the same time, 10 miles away maybe, ferocious thunderstorms with the lightning strike over and over again. Yeah. That was a cool night.
That was a cool night, I agree. That was really neat. And probably a good place to leave off our discussion of day 3.